Restoring Men in History, TempletonPrize.org. A Russian wrote this. He gave this acceptance speech, and watch what he says. Over a half a century ago, while I was still a child, I recall hearing a number of older people, now he's talking about Russia, offer the following explanation for the great disasters that had befallen Russia. Quote, men have forgotten God. That's why this has happened. Pretty profound, right? So this is Solzhenitsyn. He wrote the Gulag Archipelago, and he's doing this speech here, and there's a lot that resonates. We'll probably have to break it in two. We won't go through it all. I just read it. So I'll make a few comments as we go. Just literally read this. So that I don't have any notes, just going to make a few comments as we read it together. Men have forgotten God. That's why all this has happened. So this is about materialism, God, the spiritual, the materialist. Since then, I have spent well nigh 50 years working on the history of our revolution. So this guy spends 50 years working on the revolution, thinking about it, processing it. In the process, he reads hundreds of books. He collected hundreds of personal testimonies. And he contributed 8 volumes of his own toward the effort of clearing away the rubble left by the upheaval. But if I were asked today to formulate as concisely as possible the main cause of the ruinous revolution that swallowed up some 60 million of our people, I could not put it more accurately, and watch, this is profound, than to repeat, men have forgotten God. That's why all this happened. Men have forgotten God. That's why all this happened. Pretty profound, right? If you like these videos, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification button, and we'll keep making them. What's more, the events of the Russian Revolution can only be understood now at the end of the century against the background of what has since occurred in the rest of the world. I believe this was written May 1983. So you think back, this is 1983 when he writes this. What emerges here is a process of universal significance. And if I were called upon to identify briefly that principal trait of the entire 20th century, I would be unable to find anything more precise and pithy than to repeat once again, men have forgotten God. The failings of human consciousness deprived of its divine dimension. And what do we do without the divine dimension? Where are you at? How happy can you be without that? There's studies that have been done that say people who believe in God are happier. First of these was World War I. It's deprived it having a determined factor in all the major crimes. This is the first of these World War I. World War I was a disaster. England never should have gone in. America should have. Took the youth of Britain and changed Britain forever, destroyed their empire. And later led to World War II for the treaty. So just a disaster. How many lives were lost for that? Much of our present predicament can be traced back to it. That's true. It was a war, the memory of which seems to be fading, when Europe, bursting with health and abundance, fell into a rage of self-mutilation, which could not help but sap its strength for a century or more, or perhaps forever. I mean, England has not recovered. Look at Germany, it's a mess. France is a mess. The only possible explanation for this war is a mental eclipse among the leaders of Europe, yes, and the generals, right? Charging those lines during World War I. Insanity. Not adjusting to the machine gun and other. Poison gas. The real reason was, why did they go? Be careful of treaties you sign. The only possible explanation for the war is a mental eclipse among the leaders, that's right. Due to the lost awareness of a supreme power above them. Now that's interesting, right? Due to their lost awareness of a supreme power above them, only a godless embitterment could have moved ostensibly Christian states to employ poison gas. A weapon so obviously beyond the limits of humanity, right? So think about that. These nations went all in with poison gas. And he's saying, that can only be godlessness. The same kind of defect, the flaw, we'll just keep reading this because it's so good, this piece. You just need to hear it. I don't want to make over comments. The flaw of a consciousness lacking all divine dimension we manifested after World War II When the West yielded to the satanic temptation of the nuclear umbrella, it was equivalent to saying, let's cast off worries, let's free the younger generation from their duties and obligations. Let's make no effort to defend ourselves, to say nothing of defending others. Let's stop our ears to the groans emanating from the East and let us live in the pursuit of happiness. And he's kind of denigrating the pursuit of happiness because it's not the way Aristotle would say it, or Jefferson. If danger should threaten us, we shall be protected by the nuclear bomb. If not, then let the world go to hell, he says. The pitifully helpless state to which the contemporary West has sunk is in a large measure due to this fatal error, the belief that the only issue is that of nuclear weapons. Now watch this. Whereas in reality, the defense of peace reposes where? What do we talk about a lot at Restoring Men in History? Reposes chiefly on stout hearts and steadfast men. And we talk about this a lot, the virtues, right? You need leaders with virtues to protect the Constitution, to protect the Republic, to protect you. The West has sunk in large measure due to this fatal error, the belief that the only issue is that of nuclear weapons, where in reality the defense of peace reposes chiefly on stout hearts and steadfast men. And what causes that? Here he goes on to tell you. Only the loss of the higher intuition which comes from God could have allowed the West to accept calmly after World War II the protected agony of Russia as she was being torn apart, a band of cannibals, to accept after World War II the similar dismemberment of Eastern Europe. So we let that happen, right, FDR? The West did not perceive that this was in fact the beginning of a lengthy process that spells disaster for the whole world. Look where communism is now. It's in our institutions in here now. Cultural Marxism spread. Only once in this century did the West gather its strength for the battle against Hitler, but the fruits of that victory have long since been lost. Faced with cannibalism, our godless age has discovered the perfect anesthetic: trade, right? And commerce and trade doesn't fix all, right? Republicans like to talk about low taxes. Or they used to, at least. Not sure they do anymore. Today's world has reached a stage which, had been described to preceding centuries, would have called forth the cry, "This is the apocalypse." Trade, he says, such is the pathetic pinnacle of contemporary wisdom. Trade, materialism, trading, not everything. Not all there is to life, right? Materialism, trade, commerce is not all there is to life. There's the spiritual world. De Tocqueville talked about that. We've talked about it. That America had the balance of spiritualism versus materialism, and that made America work. Without the balance of spiritualism, you don't work. America doesn't work. The world doesn't work. De Tocqueville was saying that about America. Yet we have grown used to this kind of world. We even feel home in it. Dostoevsky warned that great events, he's kind of a depressing author, but good, could come upon us and catch us intellectually unprepared. And that is precisely what happened. Well, that happened again. We were caught unprepared intellectually during COVID, right? And he predicted that the world would be saved only after it has been possessed by the demon of evil. Whether it really will be saved, we shall have to wait and see. This will depend on our conscience, our spiritual lucidity, and our individual and combined efforts in the face of catastrophic circumstances. But it has already come to pass that the demon of evil, like a whirlwind, circles all 5 continents of the earth. So he's pretty clear there, right? What he believes is going on. And what do we see now? This is 1983. It's 2023, right? What's occurred? Has he been right? We are witnesses to devastation of the world. Doesn't it seem kind of devastated now? Be it imposed or voluntarily undergone, the entire 20th century is being sucked into the vortex of atheism and self-destruction. And what do you get with atheism? Plunge into the abyss has the aspects that are unquestionably global, dependent neither on political system nor on levels of economic and cultural development. Contemporary Europe, seemingly so unlike Russia of 1913, is today on the verge of the same collapse. Now look what happened since 1983. France and England are a mess. Italy's a mess. The whole of Europe is a mess. Germany. Different parts of the world have followed different paths, but today they're all approaching the threshold of a common ruin. In its past, Russia did not know a time when the social ideal was not fame or riches or material success. In the past, Russia did know a time when the social ideal was not fame, riches, or material success. So think about that. Where are we at in America in terms of people wanting fame, riches, material success? Social media, pictures, fame, material success. Do we want fame, riches, and material success, or do we want to become excellent and increase in the virtues, right? Or do we want to increase in serving God, or increase in serving our fellow man, or have incredible friendships of the good with virtuous men? Which is going to be, for the most part. You can have a balance. But you need to look over here a lot, right? And you need to look up to God once in a while. De Tocqueville said, right? You look up on Sundays. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to believe the whole book. But you got to look up to something larger than yourself and God sometimes, de Tocqueville was saying. All right, material success, but a pious way of life. So we talk a lot about the virtues and vices. So Russia did not know a time when the Russia did know a time when the social idea was not fame, riches, or material success, but a pious way of life. Russia was then steeped in Orthodox Christianity, which remained true to the church of the first centuries. The orthodoxy of that time knew how to safeguard its people under the yoke of a foreign occupation, which lasted more than 2 centuries, while at the same time fending off iniquitous blows from the swords of Western crusaders. During those centuries, the Orthodox faith in our country became part of the very patterns of thought and personality of the people, forms of daily life, the work calendar, the priorities in every undertaking. Let's think about that. The order it brings, the organization of the week. Faith was shaping and unifying force of the nation. But in the 17th century, let's look at what went wrong. The Russian Orthodoxy was gravely weakened by an ill-fated internal schism. In the 18th, the country was shaken by Peter's forcibly imposed transformations, which favored the economy, state, and military. Let's think about that. We hear a lot about economy, GDP. And yet, for certain religions like climate change, we will throw economy and GDP away for control, right? For certain people to benefit and many to suffer for communism, globalism, climate change, which favored the economy, the state, and the military at the expense of the religious spirit and the national life. So the state, the military, and the economy versus religious spirit and national life he's talking about. Now, we have a constitution in America, so we should have been more balanced. And along with this lopsided, see when it gets out of balance? When you get all materialism, no spiritualism, what happens to a country? Along with this lopsided, Russia felt the first whiff of secularism. Its subtle poisons permeated the educated classes. Watch the educated classes there. Notice what happens for them. In the course of the 19th century, and opened the path to Marxism. We have Marxism here now, cultural Marxism. By the time of the revolution, Russian educated circles had virtually lost the faith. Amongst the uneducated, its health was threatened. And look what happened. It was Dostoevsky again who drew from the French Revolution and its seething hatred for the church the lesson that the revolution must necessarily begin with what he says. Dostoevsky says it, the revolution must begin with atheism. Right? If you look back at the difference between the French Revolution and the American Revolution, what do you get? We always talk about this. Atheism, lack of God, drove the French Revolution. America had just gone through what? The Great Awakening, 1730s, 40s. They were built up, edified. But the world had been never known a godlessness as organized, militarized, and tenaciously malevolent that preached by Marxism. So we know how insidious Marxism is. Look at all the damage it's done. Look how it turns hatred into hatred and people turning against each other for hatred and division, which gives the tyrants and totalitarians power, right? So with Marxism, you divide people by class, race, and they do it all the time here. Then those people start hating each other and they acquire power, right? The philosophical system of Marx and Lenin at the heart of their psychology, hatred of God is the principal driving force. Let's get that again. The hatred of God is the private. They've also wanted to destroy family. Okay. Lenin, Marx, Stalin, they all wanted to destroy the American family. Principal driving force, more fundamental than all the political and economic pretensions. Militant atheism is not merely incidental or marginal to the communist policy. It's not a side effect, it's the central pivot. So here you learn a lot about what his take is. To achieve its diabolic ends, communism needs to control a population devoid of religious and national feeling. We say that all the time. Look at the attack on the nationalist, patriotism, God and family as well. There's a massive attack on God. Why? If you want power, take out God. If you want power, take out the Father. If you want power, take out the family. If you want power, take out a feeling of love of your country and reverse and turn it into hatred for your country, right? That's what they teach now in school. Hate the founding fathers, hate America, hate American principles that we were founded upon, Christian principles as well. Hate those principles, hate the principles of God, hate Christian principles, hate American principles, hate the Constitution. In fact, throw it away. Throw it away. We don't need a Constitution. We want power. We want to be able to do whatever we want to at any time. Forget that old piece of paper. Forget the founding fathers. Forget history. Tear their statues down right now. That's Maoism, by the way, Terrence. And that kind of Maoism, Marxism. Communists proclaim both of these objectives openly, and they put them into practice. The degree to which the atheistic world longs to annihilate religion, the extent to which religion sticks in its throat, was demonstrated by the web of intrigue surrounding the recent attempts on the life of the Pope. Okay, we don't need that. The 1920s in Russia witnessed an unrelenting process. Possession of victims and martyrs along the Orthodox clergy. So he's laying this out for you. 2 metropolitan were shot, one of whom, okay, let's go on. These people were shot. Tens of thousands of priests, monks, and nuns persecuted to renounce the word of God. They were tortured, shot in cellars, sent to camps, exiled. See what can happen? And it can happen here. All these Christian martyrs went unswervingly to their deaths for the faith. Instances of apostasy were few and far between. For tens of millions of laymen, access to the church was blocked, though. And they were forbidden to bring up their children in the faith. By the way, who do totalitarians always want? The children, right? Forbidden to bring up. Those children will grow up with no faith in God, without Christian principles of love your neighbor, do unto others as you would have them do to you. That doesn't make for a better nation, does it? Christian principles make for a better nation in America. It's what we were founded on. The church was blocked, so they know to go after the children. They're doing it here today, right? The indoctrination centers are going after the children, pushing the trans movement. It's anti-God, right? It's the opposite. There's 2 sexes, male and female. God created. Transgenderism is anti-God. But they go after the children, and it's wicked. The children were turned from the faith by threats and lies. One could argue that the pointless destruction of Russia's rural economy in the 30s, the so-called collectivization, brought death to 15 million peasants while making no economic sense. It doesn't matter if, let's watch this. Power doesn't have to make sense, right? Climate change makes no sense. It hurts the economy. Pushing to electric cars makes no sense. But they'll do it to enrich themselves. Money, power, control. And he talks about it for the purpose of what? Destroying our national way of life. That destroys your way of life if you can't drive a V8 and drive the car of your choice. It just destroys freedom of choice. The climate change attacks your control, just like they did with cigars and everything else, guns. It's control, and it disturbs your way of life and freedom. That key word, come on over to the freedom side, right? Come on over to the freedom side. For the purpose of destroying our national way of life, they do want to destroy. Look what they did during COVID. Did that destroy your way of life? Yes. They destroyed freedom in many states, and they tried to destroy it for all. They pushed hard, the totalitarians. Shut down business, etc. We don't need to go in that again. But you know what happened. Same policy of spiritual perversion operated throughout the brutal world of the Gulag Archipelago. Great book. We've read a piece of it here, where men were encouraged to survive, and watch this. Men were encouraged to survive at what? At the cost of lives to other, but they weren't defending each other, so the state had complete control. And eventually, what happened? They get to everybody. If you don't stand up for each other now. And you only get weaker. Come for one person in the building, Next day they come for another. Next day they come for another. That's the Gulag Archipelago, right? If you like these videos, please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification button. We would appreciate it.